Due to a nurse's oversight, Wren Cadence, was switched at birth with Lark Sparrow. We grew up in each other's worlds, our paths never meant to cross, until Lark's car accident brought the truth to light. My parents, however, couldn't bear to let her go. When I, dressed simply, first met the sparrows, Rhodes, my biological brother, muttered, "So rustic." Beside him, Lark, protested, "Rhodes." He reluctantly fell silent. My parents insisted he apologize. A 17-year-old in the throes of rebellion wasn't about to listen. Then Lark, with her striking beauty, whispered something in his ear. Rhodes, transformed, offered a half-hearted, "Sorry. Shouldn't have said that." He looked me up and down, then added, "But that outfit. Yikes. You're not exactly fair-skinned, and that blue dress makes you look even darker." His dismissiveness stung. Clutching my faded backpack straps, I stared at the floor, silent. His casual cruelty shattered my initial hopes for this family. I knew he didn't like me. It felt like a real-life tragic drama, a cruel twist of fate. Lark, in a white dress, had looked like a princess, fair skin, bright, innocent eyes. Next to her, I felt like an awkward duckling. She was so kind, so gentle, it made me feel even more inadequate. My birth mother, Willow, was kind. She sensed my discomfort and constantly reassured me. "Our Wren is so smart," she'd say, trying to boost my confidence. My new room was filled with dolls and decorated in a dreamy princess style. I felt a headache coming on. "It's just like Lark's room," Willow explained. "I thought you'd like it." I just nodded, staring at my new shoes. "Isn't she going back?" I blurted out, the question fueled by a selfish hope. Willow looked surprised. Before she could answer, Rhodes stormed in, face contorted with anger. "Knew you were trouble. Trying to get rid of Lark the minute you arrive. You're vicious." Lark wasn't in the room, but I knew she was just outside. "My parents miss her," I said, my face hardening. "No one's getting rid of her. Especially not you," Rhodes hissed. The joy of coming home evaporated. Rhodes stormed out, Lark followed, and my eldest brother, Phoenix, was still abroad. My parents looked at me, hesitant. Finally, Willow said, "Wren. We want to keep Lark. It's a crucial time for her. Going back to the county would ruin her future." She took my hand. "I promise, I'll love you both equally." What could I say? They treated me with kid gloves, terrified of saying the wrong thing. Yet, I couldn't be happy. Phoenix arrived just before school started. He was kind, unlike Rhodes. He gave me a gift, smiling. "You must be Wren. Welcome home." "Thank you," I managed a small smile. He hugged me gently. "What about me and Rhodes?" Lark's voice chimed from behind. Phoenix ruffled her hair. "Nothing for you too." "Humph. I'll tell Rhodes." Lark clung to Phoenix's arm, effortlessly charming. When Rhodes appeared, the three of them dissolved into laughter, leaving me awkwardly on the sidelines. At dinner, Rhodes chatted animatedly with everyone but me. I ate quietly, barely touching my food, feeling like a guest in my own home. Willow placed a crab on my plate. I had no idea how to eat it. We weren't well off, and I'd only ever seen them on TV. Rhodes' laughter erupted. "Mom. She doesn't even know how to eat it." Everyone stared. Willow coughed, trying to smooth things over. "It's okay, honey. I'll help you." "My mistake." "Mom, you're so biased." Rhodes whined. My father finally roared, "Shut up." Willow dissected the crab. The meat tasted like ash in my mouth. Everyone else resumed their lively conversation, leaving me isolated. Was I the problem? That night, Willow slept with me. She held me close and whispered, "Wren, are they treating you well?" I mumbled, "Yeah," burying my face in her fragrant clothes. My adoptive parents had never mistreated me. But we were poor, and as the elder sister, I was expected to be responsible and obedient. I was Liam's sister, my parents' comfort, and my grandmother's burden. I never resented her. In our small town, boys were simply more valued. Coming to the Sparrows, I saw how cherished a girl could be. "Wren, you and Lark are both my daughters. I love you both." Don't ever doubt that, Willow whispered, patting my back. I pretended to be asleep. Long after I drifted off, I heard her sigh. When Phoenix went back to college, I started tutoring sessions with Lark. Willow wanted us to bond. We sat in silence. Lark was kind, understanding, not at all spoiled. But I didn't want to be her sister, or her friend. Wren, I'm so sorry for taking your place all these years, Lark said, her voice heavy. It's not your fault, I replied, opening my workbook. I felt trapped, craving family, but unable to connect with Lark. On the first day of school, Willow made Rhodes promise to wait for me. He agreed readily enough, but as soon as the bell rang, he drove home with Lark. We were in the same grade, but she was in the arts program. I waited until dark. The streetlights flickered on, cars whizzed by. I walked towards the bus stop. I needed change for the fare. 3 girls with heavy makeup and cigarettes loitered outside the small shop. I hesitated, a knot forming in my stomach. I turned to leave. Hey, little girl, one of them called. We're short on cash for smokes. Lend us some? I silently handed her 50 yuan. She sneered. That's all? I mumbled, yes. See you here tomorrow, little girl, she said, blowing smoke in my face. Suddenly, a boy blocked their path. Give the money back, he said, his face expressionless. He looked menacing. They scattered. He glanced at me, then turned to leave. Excuse me, I called after him. Could I have 2 yuan for the bus? He scoffed, but handed me the money. Tell your parents. Don't let them bully you again. Thank you, I whispered. When I got home, Rhodes was watching TV. Tell them you were at a friend's house, he instructed. I ignored him and went to my room. At dinner, Willow said, Wren, it's good to have friends, but tell us next time, so we don't worry. My father nodded in agreement. I started to explain, but Rhodes cut me off. Mom, I waited for ages at school. Let her get herself home from now on. Rhodes didn't wait. I was late because I was mugged. Silence fell over the dining room. If you don't believe me, I'll go to the police tomorrow, I said, getting up and leaving. Rhodes got a beating for lying. He stormed into my room. You have to be so dramatic? Lark said you were nice. Turns out you're just vicious. You're just scared I'll get rid of Lark. Well, I won't. So leave me alone. He was Lark's brother, not mine. The girls didn't bother me again. I never saw the boy again either. I took the bus home every day, despite Willow's protests. Rhodes and I avoided each other, strangers connected by blood. I started making friends at school, adjusting to my new life. But the academics were challenging. I studied constantly to catch up. Wren, relax. It's just the beginning of the term, Willow said, bringing me a glass of milk. Okay, I mumbled, buried in my textbooks. Rhodes called me a nerd. One weekend, I was studying when I heard a commotion downstairs. I went out to investigate and met a boy with playful eyes. Hey, sis, he called, waving. Everyone downstairs turned to stare at me, including a girl who looked vaguely hostile. Wren, Rhodes has friends over. Want to join us? Lark asked, sensing the awkwardness. No, thanks. Just keep it down, I replied, smiling politely. Rhodes sneered. Mom and Dad aren't home. You can drop the act. I went back to my room, packed my bag, and headed for the library. As I passed Rhodes, he said, don't come crying to Mom and Dad later. I left without a word, their eyes following me out the door. Away from Rhodes' taunts, I felt a sense of relief. At lunchtime, I went to a noodle shop near the library. Enjoy, a familiar voice said. I looked up. It was the boy who'd given me money for the bus. He set down my noodles and hurried away, clearly not recognizing me. I lingered over my meal, lost in thought. The owner noticed. You like Caleb? He asked, referring to the boy. I learned his name was Caleb. He helped me once. I just wanted to thank him, I explained, blushing. Nothing wrong with liking Caleb. He's smart and loyal, even if he's broke. You've got good taste, the owner chuckled. Mortified, I paid and left. I bumped into Caleb as he returned. Oof, he grunted, clutching his arm, which was bleeding. Are you okay? I asked. Fine, he muttered, sweat dripping from his brow. He was clearly in pain. I saw a pharmacy nearby. Wait here, I said, rushing off. When I returned with bandages and antiseptic, he was wiping down tables, ignoring his injury. Here, I said, offering him the supplies. He didn't take them. You helped me with those girls. And gave me money for the bus. Remember? No. Just go, he said, still wiping, his shirt plastered to his back with sweat. At 5:30, as Caleb finished his shift, I approached him again. Let me help you with that, I said, holding up the first aid supplies. The wound was festering in the heat. Exhausted, he finally relented. I'm Wren, I said, wrapping his arm. He remained silent. I know your name is Caleb, I added. What do you want? He stared at me, confused. You helped me. Huh. I'm not a good guy. Good girls like you should stay away from me, he said, taking a swig of water. You gave me 2 yuan. Bad guys don't do that. Caleb didn't reply. After I finished bandaging his arm, he thanked me and left. Caleb, are you hungry? I called after him. Knowing his stubbornness, I thrust a sandwich into his hands and ran off. I didn't see him again until the school sports day. My friend dragged me to watch the races, where we ran into Rhodes. He scowled and walked past us without a word. Hey, Rhodes, your sis, one of his friends called, nudging him. Shut up, Rhodes snapped, shoving him aside. I watched him go, amused by his intense dislike for me. The senior boys' 100-meter dash began. Rhodes was running. I was about to leave when I spotted a familiar figure at the edge of the track. Caleb, in his blue school uniform, looked out of place. As the runners crossed the finish line, they were greeted with cheers and pats on the back. Rhodes, popular as always, was surrounded. But no one paid attention to Caleb. He stood quietly, watching the celebrations, seemingly accustomed to being overlooked. Caleb, I said, offering him a bottle of water. He stared at me, a flicker of something I couldn't decipher in his eyes. Then he took the water and drank deeply. Wren. Get over here. Rhodes yelled. I ignored him and walked away with Caleb. From that day forward, Rhodes was nothing more than a stranger. Caleb and I became closer. His father was a gambler, his mother deceased. Life had been hard on him. He worked every day after school, leaving little time for socializing. To avoid Rhodes' constant glares, I often studied at the library. Stay away from Caleb, Rhodes warned me one afternoon. Can't do that, I replied, dropping my bag onto a table. And stop bothering him. Or I'll tell Mom and Dad you're bullying him. Everyone saw Rhodes as a golden boy, smart, handsome, privileged. To me, he was just a spoiled brat. During National Day break, Lark competed in a citywide dance competition. On stage, she looked like a graceful forest sprite in her ballet costume, captivating the audience. She won first place. Phoenix came to celebrate. Rhodes threw a lavish party. In the private room, a waiter accidentally spilled hot soup on me and Lark. Before I could react, Lark cried out, Mom. Dad. It hurts. Rhodes rushed over and pushed me aside, frantically examining Lark's hand. Lark, it's okay. We'll go to the hospital, my parents said, completely forgetting about me. They all left with Lark. I went to a pharmacy and bought some ointment. The city lights blurred, the noise of the streets fading into a meaningless hum. I had nowhere to go. Wren? What are you doing here? Caleb appeared, startling me. I was sitting on a park bench, lost in thought. What happened to your hand? I hid it behind my back. Nothing. It's blistered. We're going to the hospital, he said, his face grim. At the hospital, the doctor frowned. Why didn't you come sooner? It's infected. You might have scarring. My fault. I should have noticed, Caleb said, taking the blame. It was the first time I'd seen him so subdued. After the doctor treated my burn, I offered Caleb some crumpled bills. This is all I have right now. I'll pay you back the rest. I knew he'd used his earnings to pay for my treatment. Wren, aren't we friends, he said, refusing the money. If you really feel bad, buy me noodles. We went to a noodle shop. How did you get burned? Caleb asked. Caleb, I said, do only the ones who cry get the candy? I leaned on the table, tears welling up. Caleb, my hand hurts so much I want to cry. I tried so hard to be good, but everyone overlooked me. I thought I'd scared him, but he gently stroked my hair. The Wren I know is amazing. She's one of a kind. Thank you, I whispered, a watery smile spreading across my face. Midway through our meal, Willow called. Her voice sounded tired. Wren, aren't you home yet? I'm having dinner. Come home soon. It's not safe. Your father, Rhodes, and I are staying with Lark at the hospital. Her burn is quite serious. I hung up, staring at my bandaged hand, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Caleb walked me to the bus stop. As I boarded, he pressed a bag of candy into my hand. Wren, anytime you want candy, I'll buy you some, he said, smiling and waving. His simple promise made my heart flutter. When I got home, Phoenix's door opened as I was heading to my room. Just getting back? He asked. Yes. Girls shouldn't stay out late. We worry. He stopped mid-sentence, noticing my hand. What happened? A burn. Why didn't you say anything? He frowned, puzzled. When would I have had the chance? Rhodes pushed me aside the minute Lark cried. You all only care about her. Why would I subject myself to that humiliation? I finally let out my frustration. Phoenix, unlike Rhodes, seemed mature enough to understand. Wren, you're being too sensitive, he said. Rhodes can be immature, but he doesn't really hate you. Lark's always followed him around. He's just afraid she'll leave. So, my pain was just sensitivity. I'm tired. Good night, I said, retreating to my room. Lark returned the next day with my parents and Rhodes. Wren, your brother told us what happened. It was chaotic. We didn't realize. How's your hand? Willow asked, guilt etched on her face. I stayed silent. Why didn't you say anything? We're your family. We wouldn't ignore you, my father said, his voice laced with reproach. Stop it, Edward, Willow snapped. As Willow walked me to my room, her gentle tone softened my resolve. Mom, I don't like Lark. Can you ask her to leave? I blurted out. It was the first time I'd been so openly defiant. Silence filled the room. Finally, Willow spoke. Wren, you and Lark are both my daughters. I can't give up either of you. Her eyes filled with tears. Try to accept her. I love you both. She's not your enemy. You're both good girls. This shouldn't be happening. I'll never accept her, I said, despite the sinking feeling in my stomach. After that, Willow, thinking I was just throwing a tantrum, became even more attentive, showering me with affection. But she didn't understand. I was keeping track of every slight, every disappointment. And when it became too much, I would leave. Back at school, I waited for Caleb at the gate. To thank you for the medical bills, breakfast is on me all week. I handed him a bag of food and rushed to class. This became our routine. On the last day, Rhodes saw us. He immediately accused us of dating. Wren. You're dating? He yelled in the library. Embarrassed, I pulled him outside. You're dating that Caleb? He sneered. He's 1,000 times better than you. You spoiled brat, you have no right to judge him, I retorted, walking away. Rumors spread, fueled by Rhodes. Wren, are you really with that delinquent? Willow asked, her face cold. It was the first time I'd seen her so angry. Do you really think so little of me? You all say Caleb is bad, but he took me to the hospital when I was burned. He's my friend. You can't insult him like that. I exploded, defending Caleb. My outburst seemed to calm her. She stroked my hair. Wren, you're too young. You can't tell right from wrong. I would never hurt you. She always did this, the reprimand followed by a soothing gesture. My opinions never mattered. My relationship with Rhodes deteriorated further. He despised Caleb, accusing me of throwing my life away. Caleb, wanting to protect me, started distancing himself. At the barbecue restaurant where he worked, he ignored me, focused on skewering meat. Caleb, don't you want to be friends anymore? I crouched beside him, feigning helplessness. I knew he was a softy at heart. He remained silent. When he finished, he pulled a pink scarf from his bag. Wear this and go home. This place is rough. I don't want you here. You bought this for me? Isn't pink a little young? I teased. You don't like it? He stammered, his ears turning red. I love it. Thank you. It wasn't cold yet, but his thoughtful gift warmed me. I placed a few candies in his hand. A little something. In return. I want you to try them, even though they're from you. I hoped the sweetness would bring him some joy. He deserved it. New Year's Eve arrived. Knowing I wanted to celebrate, Caleb skipped work. My family still disapproved of him. I lied and told them I was going to a friend's house. Careful. Caleb called as I ran out. It was cold. I offered him the scarf. It's not very well made, but... He wrapped it around his neck, beaming. It's perfect. He took me ice skating for the first time. Caleb, I'm scared, I said, clinging to the railing. Trust me. I won't let you fall, he said, holding out his hand. I took it, and we glided slowly across the ice. I'd never seen him so carefree. He was just a happy, playful boy. Later, we wandered through the night market. I stopped at a claw machine. Never played? He asked. My adoptive parents couldn't afford it, I explained. Try it then. He inserted some coins. I watched him use up almost all his coins. You try, I said, deflated. He won a stuffed animal and handed it to me. Happy New Year, he said. His genuine kindness filled me with warmth. As we walked, a man called out, Caleb. Lend your father some money. A scruffy man approached, hand outstretched. Caleb shielded me, his face hardening. You killed Mom. How can you even show your face? Caleb, I'm desperate. They'll kill me if I don't pay them back, the man sobbed. Caleb remained impassive. Wren, wait here. I'll be right back, he said, pulling the man into a nearby alley. Worried, I followed. In the shadows, Caleb's knuckles cracked as he made a fist. Caleb. I'm your father. You can't do this, the man whimpered, cowering. Caleb lunged, punching him. I ran forward and grabbed him, tears streaming down my face. Caleb, stop. You're scaring me. He stopped, his body trembling. The man scrambled away. Caleb sank to the ground, defeated. I sat beside him. My mom worked herself to death paying his debts, he finally said, his voice raw with pain. Because of him, I'm the deadbeat's son. Everyone avoids me. He looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed. Wren, I'm so tired. I pulled his head onto my shoulder. Caleb, let's go to Beijing for university. We'll make a good life there. That night, we made a pact about our future. After the holidays, my adoptive parents called. They said they missed me. I knew they wanted to see Lark. Mom, I want to visit my adoptive parents, I announced at dinner. Of course. They must miss you, Willow agreed. I glanced at Lark, who was unusually quiet. Maybe Lark could come too? Willow dropped her spoon. No one spoke. The next day, Lark and I boarded the bus to the county. My adoptive parents wept when they saw Lark. They couldn't afford to keep her, forced to watch their biological daughter call someone else Mom and Dad. Sis, I missed you, 10-year-old Liam cried, hugging me tightly. My adoptive parents worked long hours, so I'd practically raised him. He'd clung to me when I left, terrified I wouldn't come back. Lark, uncomfortable in the modest surroundings, left after 2 days, using a dance competition as an excuse. She cared only for the sparrows. My adoptive parents were strangers to her. My adoptive mother cried, clutching a photo of Lark. Wren, why are you so understanding? Lark has such a wonderful life. We've ruined yours. We don't deserve to be called your parents. I'd felt resentment, but what good would it do now? Just before Lunar New Year, I returned to the Sparrow house, laden with gifts. They were gathered around Lark, celebrating her acceptance into a prestigious ballet academy. The air crackled with their shared joy. I set down the gifts and left. At KFC, I gave Caleb the local specialties I'd brought. "These are for you." "My favorite." "Thanks, I appreciate it," he said, looking up from his textbooks. When he finished studying, he looked at me intently. "Did you have a good time?" "It was okay," I said, picking up his test paper. They were very polite. It felt strange. Like they were keeping their distance. "Wren, you're a good person. You'll be happy," he said. Watching him return to his studies, I smiled. This boy had become an essential part of my life. On New Year's Eve, I snuck out to meet Caleb. We watched fireworks in the square, two lonely souls finding comfort in each other's company. After school resumed, Caleb focused on his college entrance exams. Rhodes, chasing a girl outside school, saw his grades plummet. My father gave him a severe beating, which seemed to have little effect. I saw him going to a bar with the girl, her clothes and makeup flamboyant. I knew he was in trouble. One night, I came across Rhodes, drunk, sprawled on the sofa. "Rhodes, you need to focus on your exams," I said. "Mind your own business. Just don't tell on me," he slurred. I rolled my eyes and went to my room. He didn't want my help, so I wouldn't offer it. Rumors about Rhodes exploded at school, stories of him spending lavishly at bars, stealing another boy's girlfriend. His golden boy image was tarnished. One afternoon, Caleb and I were walking to the library. In a dark alley, 3 thugs were beating up Rhodes. "You think you can steal my girl, pretty boy," one of them sneered, grinding his foot into Rhodes' hand. Rhodes screamed, curling up on the ground, his usual arrogance gone. Caleb gripped my shoulder. "Wren, go call the police. Don't come back, no matter what." "No. Don't go. They're dangerous," I pleaded, grabbing his arm. Rhodes meant nothing compared to Caleb. Caleb smiled. "It'll be fine. Remember our first encounter?" He ran towards the alley. I dialed the emergency number. Seeing Caleb struggling, I picked up a stick and ran to help him. I'd never been in a fight, but I wasn't going to let them hurt him. Sirens wailed in the distance. The thugs fled. Rhodes lay unconscious on the ground. "Why did you come back?" Caleb asked, his voice sharp with fear. I cleaned his cuts. "Caleb, you were worried about me getting hurt. I feel the same way about you." He softened immediately. Rhodes' broken hand meant he couldn't take the college entrance exams that year. My father pulled some strings, and the school allowed him to repeat the year. Rhodes woke up furious, humiliated. He raved about revenge. When I visited Rhodes in the hospital with Willow, he was demanding to be discharged. "Wren, Caleb, thanks for everything," he said, coughing awkwardly. "Sorry for being such a jerk." "Anyone would have done the same," I replied flatly. He stood up abruptly, his voice rising. I said I was sorry. "What more do you want?" "Nothing," I said, my expression unchanged. A simple sorry couldn't erase the hurt. After that, Rhodes tried to befriend me, including me in gifts he bought for Lark. I could sense his desire for reconciliation. "Wren, your brother knows he was wrong. Forgive him," Willow pleaded. "I have the right not to forgive. I never saw him as a brother, and he only has Lark as a sister. Let's just keep our distance." They thought I was holding a grudge, but I didn't care. On Caleb's graduation day, I brought my camera to school. "Caleb, smile," I urged. He stood stiffly, his expression unnatural. People saw him as intimidating, but I knew him as kind, righteous, the first person to offer me sweetness when my life felt bitter. We sat on the steps, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, looking at the photos. The day of the college entrance exams arrived. "Ticket, ID, pens, got everything?" I asked, checking Caleb's bag outside the bustling exam hall. He chuckled. "Yes, Mom." After he disappeared into the crowd, I headed home. Lark, Rhodes, and Phoenix were chatting in the living room. "Were you with Caleb again?" Phoenix asked. "Yes." "Why?" Phoenix's face was serious. "Rhodes said his family is complicated. Stay away from him." Before I could reply, Lark chimed in. Wren, I saw Caleb hitting another student the other day. He's not a good person. Everyone condemned Caleb without even trying to understand him. I can judge for myself. Worry about your own lives, I said, turning away. See? Some stranger is more important than family, Rhodes muttered. He was still bitter about my refusal to accept his apology. He was a lost cause. Wren, you're so disrespectful, he shouted, frustrated by my silence. Of course I am. I'm just a hick from the countryside, I retorted. Their faces fell. Lark ran to her room in tears. Rhodes followed to comfort her. Wren, Lark didn't mean anything. It's just fate, Phoenix said, reprimanding me. I hadn't meant to hurt Lark, but Rhodes' constant jabs had pushed me too far. After the exams, Caleb went back to work. I stayed home, studying. He applied to my dream university in Beijing. When the acceptance letters arrived, he promised, Wren, I'll be waiting. My senior year began. For some reason, Rhodes, repeating the year, was in my class. As soon as the bell rang, he'd awkwardly ask if I wanted a ride home. No, thanks. I'm going to the bookstore, I'd reply, hurrying away. Everyone assumed Caleb was out of my life. But we wrote letters every month. He sent candy and helped me with my studies. Senior year flew by. Even though it was a painful place for him, Caleb came back to spend New Year with me. How's college life? I asked, blowing on my hands as we walked. He grinned. Terrible. No one to go to the library with. No one to give me candy. Are you coming back for the summer? I asked softly. Why? His eyes sparkled. Just wondering. The air felt charged. Caleb, I want a roasted sweet potato, I said quickly, pointing to a nearby stall. I'll be back, Wren. To be here for your exams, he said, his voice serious. I smiled, relieved. After the New Year celebrations, I studied nonstop. Lark received an acceptance letter from a ballet academy abroad. She wouldn't be taking the exams with us. Rhodes continued to tease me, but without the initial malice. Wren, where do you want to go to university? He asked, chattering incessantly. Beijing. Mom won't let you go that far. Wren, why are you ignoring me? He snatched my test paper, grinning. I found this new, annoyingly friendly Rhodes even more irritating than the hostile one. On exam day, I spotted Caleb in the crowd. He mouthed, good luck. After each exam, he'd anxiously check my answers. Our pact felt within reach. The day after the last exam, Caleb confessed his feelings. We were finally a couple. As I was filling out my university application, my parents dropped a bombshell. Wren, Lark and Rhodes are going abroad for university. Your father and I are going with them. We found a good university for you there too. So, I was just an afterthought. I'm not going. Go if you want, I said. Willow's face hardened. Wren, is this because of Caleb? It has nothing to do with him. I just don't want to go abroad. My father's face darkened. Don't lie. Lark saw you two together. Yes, we're dating. But I'm not going abroad because of you. You pretend it's for my benefit, but it's for her. I pointed at Lark, who remained silent. She got accepted abroad, and you can't bear to be away from her. How dare you? Willow said, her voice rising. It's true. This has been building up for a long time. You'd rather lose me than Lark. You're always on her side. You think you're being fair, but your hearts are completely with her. Tears streamed down my face. You want me to go abroad? Fine. But send Lark back to my adoptive parents. They stared at me in disbelief. What? Can't do it? Then stay out of my life. My father slapped me. The sound echoed through the room. My cheek throbbed. You're spoiled. That's why you're so disrespectful. So, in their eyes, I was the selfish, ungrateful one. I ran. Under a star-studded sky, I sat outside a small shop, waiting for Caleb. Mommy, I want a cheese stick, a little girl with pigtails pleaded. Her mother knelt down, gently touching her stomach. No, sweetie. You ate too much already. Look how round your tummy is. Her father secretly slipped her one. They walked away, hand in hand. That simple, loving connection was all I'd ever wanted. Caleb arrived. He saw my face. Who did this? He asked, his voice cold. I burst into tears. Caleb, I don't have a home anymore. He held me close. You have me. You'll always come first. His words made me cry harder. Wren, let me get you some ice, he said gently. Embarrassed by my outburst, I let him go. He took me to his apartment. Sleep. You'll feel better in the morning. The next day, Caleb helped me find an apartment. I started living on my own. A few days later, I snuck back to the Sparrow house, packed my belongings, left a note, and left. I found a part-time job. Caleb worried about me working so hard. Caleb, I don't want to be a delicate flower, always needing your protection. He didn't argue. One day, Willow came to the restaurant. Wren, come home. If you don't want to go abroad, you don't have to. Just come home. She looked haggard. I turned away. Go home, Mom. I'm safe here. Wren, you said I favored Lark. I'm trying to change, she pleaded. I sighed, leading her to a table. Mom, you may not realize it, but you have an ease with Lark that you never had with me. You're always careful around me. It feels more like guilt than love. My voice was calm, but the words were sharp. You think you're being fair, but from my perspective, she matters more. You're kind to me, Mom, but our connection just isn't there. She finally seemed to understand. Tears welled up in her eyes. Wren, we wanted you to go abroad to get away from Caleb. But if you love him, I won't object anymore. Please, come home. I'll focus only on you. I gave her a sad smile, but said nothing. When my break ended, I put her in a taxi and went back to work. I thought that was the end of it. But a few days later, Lark found me. Wren, please come home. Mom's been crying nonstop. She's a mess. I pulled my hand away. Lark, we need to talk. We sat on a park bench, finally having an honest conversation. Wren, do you hate me? For taking everything that should have been yours? Lark asked. I looked away, considering her question. Yes, I do. You're a good person, Lark, but I can't be around you. You took my life, my family. We can never be friends. She looked down, her usual cheerfulness gone. So you're rejecting me, and Mom and Dad? Mom's been frantic, trying to find you. She won't see anyone, not even me. I shook my head. Blood ties can't be broken, but family is about connection too. Our connection is too fragile. We can't be a family. Lark didn't argue. Take care of Mom when you go abroad, I said softly. I spotted Caleb in the distance and waved. I have to go. Please tell your mom not to worry about me. As I walked towards Caleb, Lark called out, we're leaving next Friday, at 10 a.m. Will you go see them off? Caleb asked as we crossed the street. I don't know, I said, distracted. He didn't press me. Roads caused a scene at the restaurant, forcing me to quit. My family tried to contact me repeatedly, but I pushed them away. I didn't need their belated concern. The day they left, I went to the Sparrow house. I hid, watching Lark help Willow into the car. Willow kept looking back at the house, reluctant to leave. Then she looked in my direction. I ducked out of sight. Everyone wondered why Willow suddenly burst into tears. I knew she'd seen me. I watched the car disappear, then slowly walked away. Rough day? Caleb asked gently when I got home. He knew me too well. I nodded. They were good to me, except for roads. But I can't live the life they planned for me. They'd left me money for tuition and living expenses. I wouldn't touch it. A few days before the semester started, Caleb and I moved to Beijing. We spent 3 happy, busy years there. After graduation, he started a gaming studio with some friends. I studied for my master's degree. Wren, come with me, Caleb said one day, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Where are we going? I asked, pulling away from his grasp. Almost there. He stopped, and I gasped. We were standing in front of a small, newly renovated apartment. Caleb knelt down, holding a ring. Wren, marry me. It's only 50 square meters, but we'll get a bigger place someday. He'd used his earnings from the gaming studio to make the down payment. We finally had a home in Beijing. After my graduation, we had a small, intimate wedding. The following September, our daughter, Apple, was born. Looking at her tiny face, I remembered that heartbreaking night after my father slapped me. The yearning I'd carried for so long finally found its fulfillment. I had found peace. Apple would be the happiest child in the world. The sparrows contacted me occasionally. I responded politely, but kept my distance. My adoptive mother came to help when Apple was born. Willow wanted to fly back, but Rhode's wife unexpectedly became pregnant, and she stayed. Time healed some of the wounds. Life was good. 5 years later, my parents returned to China with a little girl, Elsa, Lark's daughter. Out of courtesy, I took Apple to meet them. They fussed over Apple, transferring their guilt onto her. She looks familiar, I said, watching Elsa play. Willow sighed. She's Lark's daughter. She married a much older professor. They divorced. She's raising Elsa on her own. We watched the girls play, the silence awkward. Apple's 5. Are you and Caleb planning to have another? Willow asked. I smiled. I almost died giving birth to Apple. Caleb had a vasectomy. He didn't want to risk it again. Besides, I only ever wanted one child. Apple will have everything I didn't. Wren, Willow began, but the girls started squabbling. Mommy, I want to go home, Apple whined, clinging to me. Apple, this is your home too, Willow said, trying to coax her. Grandma Willow, this is your home. My home is with Daddy. I said goodbye to Willow, promising to visit again soon. As we left, Willow called after me, but stopped herself. She had nothing left to say, and I wasn't ready to listen. This was where we were. Outside the complex, Apple ran to Caleb. They had such a strong bond. Ready to go home, Apple's mom? Caleb asked, smiling and reaching for my hand. Yes, I said, taking his hand and Apple's. Let's go home. We walked away, hand in hand, the wind sweet, the sun warm on our faces. The end.